Okay, I'm back to English now then. Okay, so good evening, everybody. My name is Juliana Herbert. I'm a professor at Federal University of Health Science of Porto Alegre. And with Dr. Thais Russomano, I co-lead the Space and Extreme Environment Research Center at our university. Our group is composed by students and professionals with various backgrounds and from different regions of the world. And we are very happy to be here. And so let's just start. So welcome to our second Seminars on Space and Extreme Environments Research Center. And let me talk a little bit about the history of our seminar. Yeah. We decided to open to the public the excellent seminars our graduate students would be presenting as their final assignment of a course with the same name. The first edition of the seminar happened in 2020 when we had two invited speakers, Marco Romero from Angola and Dr. Ilaria Sinelli from Italy. This year, we have another group of master and PhD students with excellent seminars, and we're really excited to start our event today with the lecture of our invited keynote speaker. It's my pleasure to introduce Dr. Jem Milzaps as our invited keynote speaker today. Dr. Milzaps is a veteran filmmaker, a pioneering figure in the new media movement, an early web innovator, and a versatile and accomplished writer. She has produced films, videos, and interactive media on subjects ranging from domestic violence to global terrorism and has written two space theme novels. Her documentary, Madame Mars, Women and the Quest for Worlds Beyond, reframes the early years of space exploration with the context of planned human missions to Mars, and argues that, this time around, women will not be peripheral, but critical to the success of eventual Martian outposts and settlements. She has spoken about the need for diversity and inclusion in the space arena at several Mars Society conventions, at the United Nations and the SETI Institute. She's a founding member of the Global Space for Women Support and Advocacy Group, and in 2020 she was named a mentor for the Space for Women Network, a new initiative by the United Nations Office of Outer Space Affairs. She's a professor emeritus of cinema at San Francisco State University, where she taught courses on digital cinema, interactive cinema, web cinema, and short-form screenwriting. She earned her Bachelor's of Arts with honors in Creative Arts at the University of North Carolina, her Master of Arts in English in Winthrop University, and her PhD in Rhetoric and Composition at the University of South Carolina. She also holds an academic certificate in cosmology from the University of Central Lancashire in England. It's our pleasure to have you here. Thank you so much for having accepted our invitation. Over to you, Jem. The floor is yours. Thanks so much.
Okay, thank you. Thank you. Thank you. And thank you all for coming. I'm glad to see you. I know some of you. I don't know most of you, but I'm glad to see you here. And I want to thank Juliana and Thais for the invitation. I tried to talk Juliana out of it because I said, I'm not a scientist. I don't speak Portuguese. So she said, you can do it in English, and I still think you should do it. And so I was convinced. So here I am. Okay, we're going to go through a few ideas about how we might think differently about our futures in space and on other worlds. And to get us started, I'm going to go ahead and start sharing. Let me just get it all set up here. And then we will go over here.
Maybe it's better for that everyone turns the video off to optimize the transmission.
Okay, so now you should see a picture that says Otherworldliness. If any of this isn't working, I hope somebody will let you know. Let me know. Okay, so there's a quote there. Take a look at it. If you don't know who Neil Gaiman is, it's okay. I didn't know who he was until he was a guest star on the Big Bang TV show. But he says we have a way that lands beyond the world we know will call to us. So my question is, have you gotten your call yet? And if the other world or another world or other worlds have called you, what exactly did they say? Come on over, we look forward to your visit. Oh, by the way, there's no oxygen here, so you won't be able to breathe. We have radiation levels that will kill you and temperatures that will kill you, so dress appropriately. We don't have any running water, so you'll need to bring some. And there's a good chance you'll probably die here. So as you all know, who are studying this subject, space and other worlds are, to us, earthlings, at extreme environments. So why are we so obsessed about leaving our home planet? Why do we want to spend fortunes and risk our lives, live for months or years in cramped quarters just to face difficult and perhaps painful acclimation or death due to extreme conditions on another world? Well, there are a lot of answers to that question. I'm not going to choose an answer, but people say, species survival, expansionist cultures, pioneering spirits. But collectively and globally, we are a spacefaring planet. There's at least 80 spacefaring nations. I looked it up. Brazil has been a part of this since 1961, which is really early, and is currently a part of the Artemis Accords to get humans back to the moon. Even though most of us will never leave the Earth, we're still invested in our spacefaring futures. We're invested mentally, emotionally, virtually. Most of us are excited about beginning a new phase of human space exploration. The Artemis mission back to the moon, ideas for lunar villages on the moon, orbiting lunar space stations, and of course, getting ourselves to Mars and perhaps beyond. So maybe this is a good time to consider our spacefaring futures. I'm not a scientist, I'm a filmmaker, so I don't deal so much with scientific facts, I deal with ideas. So I'm just gonna throw a lot of ideas out at you in terms of ways we might consider our futures in space. When we leave, well, actually, first and foremost, what I want to suggest is that otherworldliness, or trying to get to other worlds, is perhaps a misguided goal. Maybe that shouldn't be our goal. And I'm not saying that we shouldn't travel to other worlds, but that when we think about going to other worlds, we don't consider in detail what will happen to us, to our bodies, our minds, our molecules. I think we tend to romanticize space travel and space exploration and our quest to reach other worlds. I think because it's been romanticized for us in books and movies. But there's a lot of big realities we come up against when we leave. You all know about a lot of these already. There's so many ways space can kill you, and very few ways you can actually survive. A lot of the perils, dangers of space can be mitigated. We can protect against radiation exposure. We can protect against extreme temperatures or extreme atmospheric pressures. The one thing that's really hard to deal with, that we don't have a good way to deal with it, is gravity. We have very limited experience with gravity and very incomplete knowledge. When we talk about leaving our home planet, I learned a new word. I don't know if you know this word already. The word is gravitize. And what it means in space travel is that you come into the gravitational influence of another object, and because of that, you move toward it. It's like attraction. So it kind of sounds pleasant. It sounds like almost like dancing in space. But the actuality is that when you leave your home planet, and specifically its gravitational environment, and move into the gravitational environment of another body, your body basically declares an emergency situation. The human body doesn't know what to do and tries to turn on all possible defense systems. What happens is a desperate, ongoing physical struggle for survival in an extreme environment. So what can we do about gravity? If the plan is to come back to Earth in a relatively short time. We don't know how long a time. There's no set rule on that. We do what we just have always done. We try to keep ourselves conditioned to Earth gravity so that we can reacclimate fairly easily when we come back. Well, what that means on the ISS is up to 4 hours a day exercise. So you have to really work your muscles, work your systems, because if you don't do this, what we would call, from our Earth perspective, atrophy, systemic atrophy, would gradually affect us until, if we tried to come back to Earth, it would be dangerous and perhaps deadly. So that's what we already do. We try to keep ourselves acclimated to Earth gravity as much as we can so that we can have a fairly easy return. When we're going farther into deep space and to other worlds, we're going to either stay longer and or permanently relocate. So it doesn't make sense to try to stay acclimated to Earth gravity. What you do then instead is your body needs to adjust to a new gravitational environment. We're not exactly sure what that means because we haven't done it. And it really depends on the gravity of the destination world. If there's less gravity there, maybe over time, the same kinds of things would happen to your body that happen on the ISS. All your fluids would move upward because there's no gravity to hold them down. Up and down are relative terms, as you know, in space. That doesn't make that. Up and down are not operative terms in space, but the fluids would move up. Many of your systems would, by Earth standards, atrophy as they acclimate to another environment. Your spine may elongate, so you would get taller, but you would very slowly accumulate health problems that may affect your brain, your emotional well-being, and most likely would result in a reduced lifespan. That's if you go to a planet with less gravity. If you go to a planet with more gravity, it's almost the near opposite effect. Bodily fluids would collect in your legs and feet. Your height would decrease. Over time, your bones would thicken, your muscles, bones, and joint would feel the strain. Your heart would have to work a lot faster. It's almost like lying down would be hard work. And you wouldn't be able to hardly have any physical activity. You would lie around until you die, basically. A recent study shows that humans can survive about 4.6 times Earth gravity. That's probably the most we could do. Either way, a planet with less gravity or more gravity, it's not going to be pleasant because we are really not designed for otherworldliness. So it's maybe even more than a misguided goal. Maybe otherworldliness is overrated. Consider what all you have to endure to accomplish it. We're really just adapted to this one world and this one very specific gravity. And while it's not impossible to leave and go to another world over a long period of time, things like doing this over and over and over, like planet hopping, going from one world to another, would take a huge toll on the human body and really can't be done without suffering some pretty dire consequences. I hear there are people working on ideas to mitigate this, like gravity infusions. I don't know what that means, but there may be ways in the future that we can manage our different gravities in better ways. But even so, even if we do adapt to and survive on another world, we won't be the same. We'll become a new species, because whatever we do to survive and acclimate on the other world becomes the new standard. In other words, the whatever parts, your genes, whatever parts of you make it more possible to survive, those are the traits you're going to pass on to subsequent generations. So the kind of species evolution is going to happen almost right away. So we will no longer be humans as we know humans to be. We'll be a different species of humans. And the result of that means that, even if we become Martians or Venusians or Saturnians or Proxima Centaurians, we won't be Earthlings anymore. And we really won't be able to come home. So it's almost like you have to decide, if you're going to go, or you're going to go forever. And if so, you turn into basically a new creature. So for most of us, really, this is not an option. So we probably need to think about other ways to achieve otherworldliness. And I'm going to suggest a few of those. I'm not sure if you all know who Nicholas Tesla is. He didn't invent the car. The car was named for him. He was an inventor, and he an engineer, a futurist. If you ever, he experimented and developed a lot of his inventions were in electrical components, and he experimented a lot with wireless electricity. And if you ever are in Los Angeles, go to the museum, the Griffith Observatory, and you can see a Tesla coil, which just literally shoots out lightning bolts. It's very dramatic. You can stand in front of it and get your picture made or something. I have a friend who's actually did that. Okay, so Nicholas Tesla was very interested in communicating with other worlds, including Mars. And so this is where this quote came from. He says, "I can easily bridge the gulf which separates us from Mars." So the good news is that there are a lot of ways we are using our tools and our technologies to actually achieve otherworldliness. And it's almost the standard. Well, it is the standard, I'll say, that remote exploration, doing it remotely, not actually going there, but doing remote space exploration has really become the norm. A lot of our tools and technologies we use as extensions of our senses, like a telescope, either an optical telescope or radio telescope. It extends our sight and our hearing. Space probes extend our reach, our touch into the universe. We just this week got the Perseverance rover dug up the first sample on Mars, and as soon as they figure out how to get it back to Earth, well, we'll be able to touch, parts of Mars. We can already do that with meteorites that have fallen, that have come from other worlds. So we have ways of extending all of our senses into the universe without actually going anywhere. There's a word that actually I heard that people are beginning to use called telenaut. I don't know if you've heard that word or not. It's like an astronaut, but you do it remotely. Okay, so we have our remote tools. What we're beginning to put in combination with our remote tools are media components. So recorded pictures, recorded sounds, combined with new technologies, give us things like virtual realities and augmented realities that then allow us to actually be in another environment. Like you put the goggles on, you wear the gloves, you have the boots, you have the surround sound, and you are not just watching a movie, you are actually in the movie, and it's a story that you actually you participate, you create. So it's very different from a traditional movie in which you would watch somebody else go into space, like Sandra Bullock or Matt Damon. You would be there, and you would be doing it, and you would be there. And it's not just for entertainment. We're using these to train astronauts. There's a program at NASA called NASA On-Site. It's a virtual reconstruction of the Martian surface. It's based on imagery from Curiosity, so it looks very realistic, and it enables scientists to walk around on the terrain and to even have meetings on Mars. So it's supposed to simulate like working in the field on Earth. If you're a geologist, you go out and you work in the field, and you have other geologists, and you're working with them, and you consult with them, and you discuss things. So now through augmented reality, you can do that on Mars. Another component of stay-at-home space exploration is just our networked universe. The fact that we're all online, that we're all connected. There's a caveat to that, we're really not. But that we have the wherewithal to bring space to us, to bring the whole universe to us, specifically to our connected devices. For instance, if you've heard of planet.com, they have a fleet of satellites, and so which means that they actually photograph the entire Earth every day and put it online and make it available. Most of us a few months back, in almost real time, there was some time delay, but we were able to watch the Perseverance rover land on Mars. We've been able to watch space probes land on asteroids. So, we have this way of bringing the universe right to us There's a, if you don't know it, it's called the NASA Selfies app. You can take your own, you can upload a picture of yourself in various different pictures on the universe, in a galaxy, on a planet. So you can see yourself in different parts of the universe. It's kind of silly, but it's fun. And one more example, there's an organization called Space Nation who promises anyone, anywhere can have a 15-minute astronaut experience every day because they provide astronaut training that comes to your connected device. So all of these things going on, I think it's worth asking a few questions at this point. One is, can any of these serve as viable substitutes for actual space travel? And my answer would be no, not yet. But we're getting closer and closer as the technologies improve. The other question I would ask, which I think is an even more important question, is, are all of these tools and technologies accessible to everyone? And the answer is no. We are not a fully wired or wireless world. Not everyone has access to virtual experiences. Not everyone can get these amazing images from space. Not everyone has access to the computer applications that deliver the entire universe to a network device. This is especially true for those living in developing countries, where schools and educators struggle to provide even the simplest scientific tools for their students, and don't have the network connections that would bring them closer to the universe they live in. So we have a ways to go here. It's actually ironic that we have such amazing tools that we are actually already using, and those that are coming online. But they're simultaneously expanding our access and limiting it in the same way, because not everybody can access the tools. One of the reasons I think that access and use of the sophisticated tools, I think one reason that we have a problem with that is that we have over time developed what we could call our space culture. And by that, I mean practices, customs, traditions, lifestyles, norms, values, ethics. But our space culture, because of the way it's evolved, really defines who has access to the tools, the information, the training, who can participate and who can't, who makes key decisions about our futures in space. This limiting of access, I think, begins in the schools. It extends into higher ed. It's reflected in hiring, advancement practices in space agencies internationally, because these aren't just schools or space agencies or labs. They are institutions that reflect and embody the prevailing culture. And the bottom line is really, we have not made it a priority to make space exploration more inclusive. We just haven't done that. And despite advancements that we've seen in STEM education and STEAM education, but mentorships, more equitable hiring practices, we can't honestly say that all are welcome, all have access, all receive encouragement, if what they want is a way to explore space and other worlds. To me, that means that a classroom or a boardroom or a lab is just another kind of extreme environment. You know, it's an extreme environment here on Earth, and a lot of people really have to struggle to survive within it. I was trying to find a way to kind of demonstrate what I think I'm talking about when I say space culture. And actually, there are space cultures. I read a story recently about how space culture in China is developing its own distinct variety, and it's based on Chinese history and Chinese culture. It's all in how space missions are named, how they are celebrated in China. So it's like if you have a space program, you have a space culture, and you define that space culture. But in the US, which is the only one I know about, I found a way that I think kind of embodies what I mean by space culture, and the fact that it really hasn't changed a whole lot in the past few decades. So let me go to this, and I hope you enjoy it.
She packed my bags last night, pre-flight, 0 hour. 9 a.m. And I'm gonna be high. As a kite by then. Miss the earth so much. I miss my wife. It's lonely out in space on such a tight and I think it's going to be a long, long time. The touchdown brings me back again to find I'm not the man they think I am back home. Oh, no, I'm a rocket man. Rocket man. Burning out his fuse out here alone. And I think it's gonna be a long, long time till touchdown bring me around again and find I'm not the man they think I am. Oh, no. I'm a rocket man.
Okay, and that's enough of William Shatner for the moment. I hope you enjoyed it. And I hope you got it. It was like, this is the way our space culture has been defined from the very beginning. And the fact that he's Captain Kirk from Star Trek, he's doing Elton John's Rocket Man as a Vegas lounge act. I don't know if that means anything to those of you who live in other countries, but it's kind of supposed to be retro cool and funny. But I think if you look at the quote on the screen now, we could also say that it represents artifacts of the past. We haven't really done a lot of up-to-date thinking about who we are and what is our space culture right now. So the idea of reimagining our space culture, it's maybe something to think about. Space culture has not changed very much since humans, which was specifically 12 white male Americans, visited other worlds. We haven't done any thinking about our identity, our values, our practices as we prepare to go into deep space. One more time, as an example, people keep trying to change what we call space missions away from manned mission, but it really sticks. And they've tried calling it crewed missions, piloted missions. But the fact is most people still say manned missions. Another example is while we routinely send all male crews to the ISS, the idea of an all-female crew is foreign, and it actually has never happened. So there has never been, because women just aren't allowed to explore space by themselves. So we have these leftover things from our earlier space age that we really have to deal with. We have to revise our thinking. And we have to think about really how we will represent ourselves when we move back out into the universe and hopefully find our way to other worlds. Some have suggested that we should all think of ourselves as earthlings, and that will kind of encourage us to think about ourselves as all of us as being representing our home planet. There's someone you're going to hear from in a minute, Jill Tarter. You may have heard about from SETI Institute. She says that when she speaks to groups, she leaves people with an assignment, and the assignment is to change your social media tags to earthling. Call yourself an earthling, and then start acting like one. Well, what does that mean? The idea of humans as being a unified species, I think, is also reinforced by something called the overview effect. I don't know if you've heard of it before. It's the sensation that astronauts get either from Earth orbit, from the moon, and it's the idea of seeing the Earth from another perspective, seeing the Earth from space. It's been described as awe-inspiring, breathtaking, life-changing. Frank White, who actually invented the term, or other overview, said he describes it as the Earth is one system We're all a part of that system, and there's a unity and a coherence to it all. Well, that's really nice for people who get to go into space. Most of us do not. And in fact, there is no overview effect on Earth. In fact, the reality is this place is kind of a mess. On Earth, we are really not very unified. We subdivide ourselves incessantly. We identify by gender, ethnicity, nationality, age, politics, values, on and on and on. We define ourselves often by these categories, and we differentiate and distance ourselves from others who don't fall into the same categories, which actually leads to us versus them thinking, or us versus others. We have more affinity to people who belong in the same categories we do, and we have less affinity for those who do not. So is this the wrong way to go, or is there any value here? What I want to suggest is that things are a lot more complicated than that. In fact, there's something called a singleton. There's a singleton hypothesis that this whole idea of us being unified, of us being a unified whole on Earth may have a downside because of the singleton hypothesis that hypothesizes that at some point on Earth, intelligent life will organize itself into one unified whole, but that unified whole may be ruled by AI, it may be ruled by a dictator, it may be ruled by a powerful world government. In other words, it may not be good for all of us, even though we're unified. There's a downside to it. And what I really want to suggest is that maybe the fact that we're not unified on Earth maybe has an upside. Maybe there are some advantages to that. Maybe maintaining our varied identities can help us more fully and accurately represent ourselves when we don't go back into the universe. It may help redefine this prevailing space culture into one that is more diverse. It can help us prepare for encounters with others if we encounter others in space. And it may help us think about ourselves differently because to others in space, like if people live on a different planet, we're going to be the others. So it really, turns this whole idea of us versus them or us versus other upside down. And as we think and plan and anticipate that we may have otherworldly encounters, what we realize is that there may be more diversity in the universe than we can even imagine at this point. Maybe instead of considering ourselves as Earthlings, thinking of ourselves instead as planetary citizens might be something worth considering. It's a little bit of a broader way to think about yourself, and I think it suggests some responsible behavior, like we're all looking out for each other and our planet. So maybe this is the way we think of ourselves in the universe. Before I close, I really want you to hear from two people. I'm working on a film called Otherworldliness, and these are two amazing people I've interviewed for the film. And I have little clips which are really relevant to what we're talking about here today. The first is Jill Tarter, who founded the SETI Institute. If you don't know what SETI is, it's the search for extraterrestrial intelligence. She's sometimes called an alien hunter. If you've seen the movie Contact, it's about her life. I interviewed her a few weeks ago, and one of the things that she talked about was how we consider the other. You see the quote from her there on the screen: "A cosmic perspective is not a luxury, it's a necessity." And part of this has to do with how we consider others that we may encounter in the universe, how we become a part of an interplanetary community as equals, as adversaries. How do we behave as Earthlings, as one species among many? Specifically, what she talks about in the clip that I'm going to show you is meta-law. Meta-law is kind of a cosmic golden rule, how we treat others we may encounter away from Earth. So let me play the clip, and you'll hear Jill talk about it.
So there's a whole subset of law called space law, and under that there's a subset called meta-law, which is dealing with the other, right? So you think about the golden rule. You want to do unto someone else the way that you'd like to have them do unto you. But if it's an other, how do you know what they would like, right? Maybe what we do, trying to treat them the way we would like to be treated, is exactly the wrong thing. It's anathema to them, might harm them. So meta law doesn't get a lot of airtime, but there are scholars who are trying to think through these deep questions that are brought up only because there might be the possibility for humans to travel between worlds.
So Jill Tarter's lifelong quest, she'll tell you if you ever hear an interview by her or anything, is she wants to answer the question, are we alone in the universe? And we don't know the answer to that question. But what we do know is that if there are other intelligent species out there somewhere, they are going to be different from us, because just as our planet and the way our planet has evolved has affected our own evolution, these other worlds will have affected the evolution of beings on those worlds. So all we know for sure is they really won't be like us. By the time we meet them, we probably won't be like us either, because we're still evolving. And that means I want you to hear from someone else, Sir Martin Rees. And this is his quote: "We should bear in mind that we are not the culmination of evolution." Sir Martin, he has been knighted by the Queen, but when I met him, he told me I could call him Martin. He's the royal astronomer, sometimes referred to as the Queen's astronomer. He's a cosmologist, he's an astronomer, and he's a very delightful person. And one of the things we talked about, he's written a whole bunch of books. One called Just Six Numbers. It's really about kind of the balance of all the material in the universe, and that if anything had been off even slightly, we wouldn't be here. So it's about how we got here. And then his more recent book that he just published is called On the Future, in which he talks about where he thinks we're all headed. So one of the terms that gets thrown around a lot today is post-humans. Where are we headed as a human species on Earth, and by extension, into space? So post-humans really has to do with engineering ourselves for the future, evolving ourselves and our machines, both on other worlds and on Earth. This genetic engineering, the emergence of AI, and many, many more examples of human-machine partnerships. We don't know what that means. That's all a big evolving area, but we know we can't explore other worlds without machines. So we work with machines. I don't know if we become machines, but we definitely need machines in our life if we're going to continue as a spacefaring species. So he talks about, in this clip I'm going to show you, what we may gain, what we may lose from this kind of human engineering. Let me play the clip for you.
Some people talk about cyborg technology, which means that you don't just change the human genome, but you somehow link us to something electronic to enhance our brain power or something like that. That's possible. And of course, some will go further and say that eventually it will be possible to somehow download our brains into a machine. Of course, that raises a deep philosophical question. Would that still be you if you were downloaded to a machine? But certainly it would be a very different experience if you were an entity like that from if you were a human being, because we are determined not just by our brains, but by our sense organs and our bodies and the way we perceive the external world. So that would be a very different entity, which might have the intelligence of a human being, but would be very different.
So we're not our brains alone, but there is some essence of being human that we might have to give up as we evolve ourselves and our technologies together. It's actually not even anymore a question of if we're going to do this. We're already transforming ourselves into post-humans. I'm sure you know who Ellen DeGeneres is. I like this quote: "We can't be the best that creation has to offer." We are going to continue to evolve. And as we evolve, we need to rethink exactly what it means to be human. we know that when we go into space, it's going to change us. And even if we stay on Earth, what we do in space is still going to affect us. We will ultimately become a different kind of human. So some of the questions that maybe we should be asking about this idea of evolving along with our technology, who controls the tools? Who and to what end? How much are we in charge of our own evolution? Who gets to define the beings that humans eventually become? We know there are huge benefits to some of the technologies that we've developed for space exploration. We've seen already from earlier space ages. I mean, these are some of the things that were invented to help humans live more safely or comfortably in space, but they have applications on Earth. Things like scratch-resistant lenses for sunglasses, because on the moon there were all these little fine dust particles. You know, they had to make the coverings to the space helmets scratch-resistant. Insulin pumps, dust busters, you know, the little hand vacs, space blankets, solar panels, water filtration systems, memory foam. Anybody have a memory foam blanket? Well, you can thank space exploration for it. So we benefit from technologies and products that are actually invented for space, but we find ways to use them on Earth. In addition to that, we're learning as we go how to apply practices that enable humans to survive on other worlds that will also then improve our lives right here on Earth. When we go to Mars, maybe I should say if, but it's a when. When we go to Mars, resources like breathable air and water are going to be in such short supply that extreme conservation of those resources is going to become absolutely necessary. Well, maybe that helps us learn how to conserve resources better on Earth, because our resources are getting pretty short here as well. Maybe learning how to grow food in a harsh environment will enable us to grow food more efficiently on Earth and grow crops in harsher conditions. We're actually working on that. We're doing that already. So we have this interesting back and forth balance with, you know, the problems with going into space and the benefits of going into space. And one of the things one of the things I wanted to talk about, this is my last point, and then we're going to go to Q&A, is the whole idea of learning to be who we are in space, and that it is an anticipatory process. In other words, we don't know if there's anybody else out there. We don't know exactly which worlds we're going to, when we're going to get there, what's going to happen when we arrive. But we learn to anticipate ahead of time what our responses may be to those particulars, to whichever world we end up on. Some people have described what happens, or what could happen, I guess, in the universe as something called a cosmic commons. In other words, instead of seeing it as us versus them, or here versus there, it's like a big unified whole, and it's a shared space. And I'm not talking about a specific location. I'm just talking about the universe in general, with many worlds and many relationships among those worlds. A shared space, and it's almost like the concept of an old-fashioned village commons. You know, like you go to the commons and you just hang out with people and you feel welcome there and you stay as long as you want, and then, you know, it's yours and it's everybody's at the same time. So this idea of a shared space where everybody's welcome, everybody's equal, everybody can participate and contribute. It's also kind of like Wikipedia or Wikicommons. You know, nobody owns it, we all own it, and we all use it, and we all can contribute to it. Or it's like a public library, or the open seas, or, you know, we have a lot of examples of commons. But the idea is that we think of ourselves as one among many. we are not the end all and be all of creation in the universe. We have to get over that. And we have to figure out, as we locate other worlds as potential human destinations and evaluate these, we're also evaluating our futures as human in the universe, as humans in this universe. And the more we study these other worlds, the more we learn about how to live successfully on our own world, and vice versa. I am going to stop sharing now, and I have to tell you something. During that whole process, I couldn't see any of you because all I could see was my screen. So I have no idea if you enjoyed any of that or not, but there it is. And I'm happy to address questions or talk about any of these further. I hope I've said something of interest. I'm going to turn it back over to Juliana.
Awesome, Jen. Thank you. Thank you so much. It was such an interesting lecture. And I'm sure that people enjoyed it because actually some of them already have written the chat area. That was a terrific lecture. It was really wonderful. Thank you so much.
Excellent indeed. Very, very good.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Lots to think about, actually.
Yeah, very philosophical.
Yeah. I think that we can go then for questions and remarks. Okay, so let's do the following. We can do that. You can raise your hand when you want to do a question. You can do a question em português or in English. Você pode fazer em português ou em inglês, né? A gente traduz. So we will translate to English if you do the question in Portuguese. And so, okay, let's start with Ana. Ana, please, go ahead.
Dr. Milsatz, is that right? Is that how you pronounce it?
Yes, yes.
Yes. Thank you so much for such a brilliant lecture. I really enjoyed it. It's a topic, I'm a molecular biologist, but here in Brazil, when you take the exam to start the university, you have like the first option and the second option. My second option was physics, thinking about going to astronomy, but then I passed for my first option and I ended up becoming a molecular biologist. But I really enjoyed your talk and it made me think about, so many things. One question that someone asked is about the movie, the film. When is it going to be released? How can we do to watch it? And some of the things that you mentioned made me think about the One Strange Rock documentary. I'm not sure if you've seen it.
Yeah.
And I'd like to know your opinion because it talks a lot about the Earth, our world, from the point of view of 8 astronauts, and all this feeling that you talked about when you were out in space and you see how small we are, how just a little something we are in the middle of the universe. And also I'd like to know your opinion about the translational research involving genetics, genomics, and extreme environments such as space. Because we molecular biologists, we usually study a lot extreme environments such as those, thermal pools, like in Yellowstone. That's where we find all these amazing enzymes that are produced and synthesized by bacteria that live in these extreme environments, and how all this research that we've been developing now, that we've come so far regarding the human genome, how can this be applied in space research?
Oh, okay. Is it Anna?
Anna, yeah.
Anna. Okay. That was a lot of questions, and I'm going to try to distill it down. As far as my movie, Otherworldliness, you saw clips from the only 2 interviews I've done so far. I'm just getting started, so it's going to be a while. But all of your questions that you asked after that are really topics that I plan to cover in the movie because they're my interest as well. And the whole idea of where we're going with genetic engineering and what that might mean, just, the extreme idea that we could actually customize ourselves to live on other worlds. We can genetically engineer ourselves to be compatible with any other world if we get that far. So I think these are big, huge questions, and they're not, I think we should probably be thinking more about them already, even though we're not doing all these things yet. I think it's really time to consider the ethics of some of the research. I think the whole idea of AI, and a lot of people have written about and talked about AI, is, again, it's mixed. There are going to be benefits, there are going to be dangers, there are going to be scary parts to dealing with AI. So I don't have answers to your questions. I have the same questions. Let's leave it at that.
Yeah, now during your answer, I thought, like, if we could use another planet to produce all these transgenic crops that are destroying our nature. So maybe instead of planting them and, changing our environment, we could make use of all this genetic engineering and produce this food in other worlds,
Yeah.
I don't know, it's just like just crazy thoughts here. But thank you very much.
Sure. Maybe we can go to another question while we still have some time.
Yeah, thank you, Ana. Ok. Vocês têm mais perguntas, pessoal? So, okay, I'm going to ask something then. So, Jem, you talked a lot about the need for diversity and inclusion in the space arena. And I was just thinking if we can get this kind of thing, maybe, do you think that the inclusion, or to achieve this inclusion, to achieve the diversity in the space arena, could help to achieve inclusion and diversity in other science fields, for example, or in our lives in general? What do you think that other way around? Yeah, actually.
Yeah, I actually think that, starting in schools, like even elementary school, is the place to start, when making everybody feel welcome, teaching everybody the same information if they want it, giving everybody the same opportunity. So I think it starts on Earth. It just, it extends itself into who goes into space, but there's a huge bunch of people on Earth that are responsible for making every event in space happen. And so all of those people, if we can apply more diverse practices to hiring, to advancement, to decision making on Earth, then having it all reflect in space is just it's a done deal by that time. But we have to do it on Earth first, I think.
Thank you very much. Okay, more questions?
Don't be shy. You can ask in Portuguese. We can translate.
Okay, Amanda, please.
Hi, I just wanted to start by thanking you a lot. And I sort of want to hear your opinion on something. You talked about those sort of like astronauts and how they train using the IA. And so since so many professions have changed so much due to COVID and becoming mostly online or even 100% online, do you think we may get to a point when we don't need to send humans to space anymore because we can collect all the data we want and need using technology? Or do you think that's not going to work?
I think that there's two ways of thinking about it. A lot of people, well, including Sir Martin Rees, who I showed you his clip, he thinks we shouldn't waste our money sending humans into space at all. That we can do everything remotely through our machines, our robots that we send. Certainly cheaper that way, it's safer that way. but at the same time, you can't get to the detailed study, I guess. Like I guess what I'm trying to say is like the people who drive the rovers, you know, they have to kind of think ahead. Like, I'm going to send it 3 inches this way. I'm going to send it 4 inches this way. And they have to like send that code to Mars. So the rovers then get the code and they do the 3 inches or the 4 inches. But what if along the way you see something really exciting way over there? You know, you can't turn and go there because it's all so strictly thought out and communicated. So there is a lack of information and exploration that you can't get with just machines. So I don't have a strong opinion either way. I don't want to kill people by sending them into space if it's not safe, but I really do want humans to find out everything they can about other worlds. So I guess if I had to come down on one side or the other, I would think we send humans when we need to, I guess.
Thank you so much.
We have one question at the Padlet. Alison, I don't know if you want to talk about your question or if you want, I can read. Okay, don't have my, okay, no problems. I can read it. No problems. Okay, so we have in our Padlet a question. The question is, from Alison Lewis. He asks, so I'd like to ask about Jen's opinion on whether we should be more preoccupied on resolving our issues here in Earth first, such as social inequality, rather than trying to go to other planets, or that all this effort can teach and have positive impacts on humanity about such social issues. So, yeah, I don't know if you understood.
Yeah. So the whole idea of taking care of our problems on Earth, maybe before we start sending ourselves off into space. I think I would like to make a distinction between resolving our issues and just acknowledging our issues. I think, you know, we can work to resolve issues, and we're probably never going to get all of our issues resolved. But I think what we can do, acknowledge that we are different. We are different people on Earth. Like, I'm different from you, you're different from somebody else. You know, we have differences. We don't agree on things, but we can acknowledge that and still move forward as planetary citizens, if that's what we decide to call ourselves. And you can't wait until you get all your problems solved to go into space, because you're never going to get there. So I think you do both at the same time. You work on your problems on Earth, and you work to get yourself elsewhere in space, and maybe then have a fresh start. I don't know. What I really hope is that we don't carry our problems with us. That would be like the worst thing, is that we go and start a new world and it's just as bad as this one. That would be terrible. So I think we have to be thoughtful and purposeful about how we do it.
I think that if I can just contribute with something, I think that it is to consider that we have problems here because we go, you know, to explore other worlds or go to space. It's not correct, because all humanity has, like, thousands and thousands of years here on Earth, and we always had problems. And we start human space exploration in the 60s, in 61 precisely, with Gagarin's flight. So there is no proper connection between going into space and the problems here on Earth. We can stop going into space. We are not going to help any problems here on Earth, because it is corruption, it is things based on wars and competition between countries and not collaboration. So it is. I don't see the relationship between going to space and the problems here on Earth. They are not connected somehow, in my personal opinion.
Well, unless we connect them. I mean, unless we connect those two, they're not. But we could make a bad move and connect those two.
Yeah, no, for sure. And somehow, if you consider the problems here on Earth, like children dying of treatable diseases because of lack of clean water, sanitation, or any other problems that you have, poverty and so on. If you compare that with anything, so anything would be superfluous, not just to explore space. So in my mind, because I'm saying that because I give lots of lectures, and this question is very common somehow. People come to me and ask this question. And because I'm a medical doctor, and I study space life science, humans in space. So it comes, why to explore space and so on. I think that what is behind the question, in fact, is a psychological fear of detaching ourselves from our planet. We question space in a way that we do not question anything else. We don't question Formula One cars racing, which millions and millions of dollars and many other things that we just spend money on. So I think that there is this psychological issue that by exploring space, this area this specific area is detaching us from our planet, and it's very scary, above all. So it's better to stay here and treat whatever we have to, as Jen said very wisely, to acknowledge, to identify, to understand, and possibly to overcome some of the problems. But then we are still here. We are still in our planet. We are taking care of humanity and our planet. So just a consideration. I think that's more psychological than anything else. A psychological issue that we have with space.
Yeah, and actually, just trying to complement that, the statement that Jem brought, like from Joe Tarter, like a cosmic perspective is not a luxury; it's a necessity. So I think that it just comes very well with all this discussion. Yeah. So, do you have more questions? Any more questions? Okay, so I'm going to ask just one more. So about Mars One, I know that this is something that I didn't say before when I was just talking about Dr. Millsap's bio, but she was one of the 1,000 selected people from a group of 200,000 people in this for this commercial organization called Mars One. I know that it seems that it's not going to happen. It's not going to go on. But even so, you are one of the 1,000 people selected from 200,000 people to go to Mars. So if you can talk a little bit about this experience of participating in this selection and what you think about all this idea of Mars One.
One-way ticket.
Yes, so that's what most people remember about it. They're going to send people to Mars, and yes, I did apply for Mars One. I actually made it. By the time they got through the evaluation, I made it down to like the last 700, and then they chose 100. I didn't make it. I didn't make that cut. But anyway, why I applied to Mars One, because I wanted to go in space my whole life, and there was never, nobody was going to send me into space. I was a girl, and at my age, when I was growing up, girls were not even allowed to study science and tech and math, so I was not prepared. So here comes this organization that is committed to diversity. They were promising to send 2 men and 2 women, and from four different countries. So they were trying to be globally diverse. They were trying to be gender diverse, and how could you not appreciate something like that? So of course I applied. I do want to say that, when I said in my remarks earlier, we tend to romanticize space travel. I think I did that a lot with Mars One. And I'm actually so glad that I didn't end up on Mars, because I think it would have been way too harsh an environment for me. But I do like the idea of thinking about Mars One. I think, and I appreciate, and I keep in touch with the Mars One people, appreciate what they were trying to do, even though they didn't make it. And the whole idea about being a one-way trip, that was to make it affordable, because they didn't have to invent the technology to get people home. So they were going to be able to raise, they thought they were going to be able to raise enough money to do it if they didn't have to bring people home. It wasn't.
I was part of the team of Mars One.
You what?
I was part of the team of Mars One as a space doctor. So I had a meeting with here in London with what was his name?
Bas Lens. Yeah.
Yes. And so I joined the team for Mars One. I was not that shocked with the idea of a one-way ticket, as many people were. It is. I think that it is it's a decision, that someone can make to go to Mars and stay there until they die. It is. I think that's less risk somehow, or less. It is more accepted in my mind than to go to a war, for example. And people go to wars, and they know that they can die or come back with lots of health issues, mental issues, physical issues. So I was not that shocked with the Mars One idea, the ticket, the one-way ticket. I just, as a space doctor, I just think that we are, in terms of knowledge, we are far away from that moment, the moment to explore, to really explore Mars. I think that unfortunately, after 1972, when we had the last Apollo mission on the moon, we basically missed an opportunity for decades to really explore another celestial body, our satellite, living there and working there. I think that we would be much more prepared now to go to Mars if you had stayed on the moon after the Apollo missions.
Well, there was a plan. There was a plan at NASA to, after the moon missions, to then go to Mars. I mean, it was supposed to happen right after the Apollo missions, and the political climate changed. The funding dried up. Didn't happen. So we've been waiting for like 50 years or more to restart this whole idea of going to Mars. I think that maybe if we had gone on to Mars, it would have been all guys. It would have been, it wouldn't have been a diverse. Women weren't ready. We weren't ready then. We weren't educated. We didn't have the experience, So in a way, the fact that it didn't happen right away, I think puts a lot of us in a better position to participate now, to lead some of these missions now, which wouldn't have happened if we had done it in the 70s and 80s. So, we might have been closer to living on Mars now, but I think we wouldn't be the same. We wouldn't be the same if we had gone right away. So I'm kind of glad we didn't.
Yeah, no, not right away. I agree. But I mean, if you had stayed on the moon in terms of having habitats there and surviving and working there, we would know so much more about human beings in space, human beings in hypogravity. That would be amazing. We stayed on Earth's orbit, which is cool. The space shuttle program, the Mir space station, the International Space Station. We learned a lot, but not exactly how to live on another celestial body, not a planet, because the moon is not a planet, but in any case, it would be a good training. And I think that we would have learned a lot. Unfortunately, as you said, because of money reasons, political decisions, it was, we had this scientific gap in our knowledge.
And I think that we have the last question here at our chat area. That what's your opinion about Elon? Oh, sorry, two more questions then. This is okay. What's your opinion about Elon Musk's vision of space?
Oh, Elon Musk? Is that the question?
Yes, Elon Musk. Yeah.
I think he's determined. I think he has the money. I think he will keep trying until he gets there. I think he has a lot more license to be experimental about it than, say, a national space agency, because like NASA and other space agencies really have to answer to the people in the nation they represent. So they have to be very cautious. They have to be very safe. So it's going to take them a lot longer to do anything. Because he's private, Musk can do whatever he wants with his money. So, he's just going to do it. And I think if he gets us there, and if he gets us there safely, it's going to change everything. So I'm just, waiting and anticipating, I guess. Yeah.
Thank you. And okay, Isabella, please.
Hi. I was just thinking about what Professor Rusumano commented on, this fear of the unknown, of going into outer space. And since we were talking about films and movies, it's very common on those kind of movies to have this sense that if you step out of your ship, you're going to die. Or you're either going to get infected or an alien's going to come and kill you. So my question is, do you believe that movies and media are at least partially to blame for this psychological fear of space exploration?
I think we have to share the blame in a lot of different ways. Certainly movies, but they're intended to scare us. They're intended to not just scare us, but thrill us. They're intended to make us go through a whole range of emotions in and around, space stories. But I think that some of the very real things that have happened, like you're probably all too young to remember that when the first shuttle exploded. I'm not. That really brought everything home, like skid to a stop. Be careful. Let's just stop everything and think about this. We just killed 6 astronauts. So I think there's a reality component as well that has scared us, and then I think just anytime, I guess I would say it's human nature of just anytime you think of going to a unfamiliar environment, there's some level of concern, of caution, of being afraid. So I think in some ways it's just built into our psychology.
No, I agree. I think that it is just in terms of the psychological fear that I was talking about, is something very deep inside. It's something that it is not related to aliens outside the spacecraft or whatever, that can destroy a space mission to Mars or to the moon. I think that this is basically a consequence of this fear. You just give, let's say, face and voice to aliens that basically express this fear. I believe that it's like the cradle or the mom and the baby, when they have to start separating from each other, when the baby is old enough to start exploring the world. It is something sometimes very traumatic. Sometimes it creates lots of fears, especially in the baby. But that is a fear of a very deep, something that maybe we were not designed to mentally, emotionally, we were not designed to experience. Maybe we are still in an evolution of our mind and psychology that we are not ready to go and live in another place. Maybe this is, again, going back to the moon aspect, that we left in 1972 and we didn't stay there to live there. Maybe it was also playing, this psychological fear was also playing a role there, because we had everything to stay on the moon. We had everything to somehow to create a habitat, to have rovers there and explore the soil and this and that. But we decide not to. Maybe that's the money, the political change and this and that. It's just excuses. Now, again, it's the fear to leave the planet. This is something extremely atavic. Maybe it is from the cave era that is still with us. We are not, maybe psychologically, we are not space beings. We are still pretty much linked to our planet. I don't know. It's just I'm just motivated by Jen to be a bit philosophical tonight, and because here is all it's 10:15 p.m., so it gives me the excuse to be even more philosophical.
Yeah. Okay. So thank you so much, Jen, for the wonderful lecture. As I said, they will have lots of comments there in the Padlet and the chat area that people really enjoyed their lecture. And it was a really pleasure and a real honor to receive you here in our event. Thank you so much.
Thank you
you.
very much. It was
Enjoyed
awesome.
it. I'm glad to meet you all, and good luck to all of you in your futures, whether you stay on Earth or go elsewhere.
Oh, great. Thank you. Okay. We have the seminars in Portuguese. Of course, we were invited, but I don't think that you'll be enjoying it so much. But yeah, but thank you so much, Jen.
Bye-bye, everybody.
Bye.